That is a problem.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of Committee of the Whole to order on April 1st at 6 p.m. Eddie, would you call the roll, please?
Cobb.
Here.
Kudo.
Here.
Petrus.
Here.
Larson. Maddox.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
All right, everybody's here. So first on the agenda, Destiny Burns from the Lee Road Merchants asked to speak to us. So Destiny, I'm gonna ask you to come and sit at the head of the table. And get a good look at you from here.
Okay.
And you're gonna tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, so I just wanted to come and give a status of what's going on Lee Road, some of the discussions we've had with the city, some successes, and some areas we can work on. So first of all, I want to say a thank you to the city because some things have been addressed. When the construction started of the marquee back in August, we all on Lee Road started to feel the impacts of that. I would say my business and others that I've talked to, I'm down about 30% since the construction started. It's been a real impact on the number of people coming in and the level of business, and I'm not the only one. So back in the, beginning of the year timeframe, Brian actually did some work with me to put some signs on Lee Road, right at Tullamore, that says free parking, that has a sign. That's very helpful. Put up the orange signs in the back by that sketchy little walkway. This is Lee Road this way. That was very helpful. Taking down some of the contradictory signs in the parking garage that were confusing people. Is there free parking? Is there not? So that's still a work in progress, but much better. So some things have been done to address some of the issues we're encountering. One of the main issues that we're encountering is the wayfinding. People that live in this neighborhood used to get to the garage from Cedar, and now that's blocked off. And a lot of people, even that live in this area, don't know that the only way to get in is through park. So I have people tell me over and over and over and over again, where do you park? I said, there's a huge parking garage right across the street. It's free. Couldn't find it. There's one over there? What? People just don't know what's there. And if you're not from this area, you don't know it all. So some wayfinding signs from Cedar would be fantastic. I do want to mention that the city has met with us about this. John Foreman organized a meeting with the mayor and his staff on February the 9th.
Okay.
And we sat in this room and we laid out all these concerns. Got to be March 15th. None of us heard a peep about it, about any of the issues we discussed. So I sent a follow-up email on the 15th of March, and I still haven't received any kind of, just looking for status. What's the status of some of these things we talked about? But it's kind of been crickets. So that's why I decided to come today and just lay these issues out before you so you can be aware of what we're dealing with. Another issue is the lighting in the garage. So I went over there today, and I think some of this may have been addressed, but I'm not sure. The lights were on a
Sensor.
Yeah, the sensor, so motion activated. So it was really dark and sketchy, and people were kind of scared to be in there after dark. The Parks and Rec people said they could turn it on to be full on and after dusk and then full off in the morning. So I did notice there was lights on the outside today when I went there. When I drove in, there was no lights in the garage, but it was still light out. So maybe they did put them on a timer to start at dusk. So I'm gonna go check that out. If they did, that's great. I'm also gonna check the stairwells. The stairwells have been dark, even when the garage has been motion lit, and the stairwells are kind of scary for people. The elevator is still broken. We've heard over and over again that we had a contract, we have a contractor coming, but we're just on the list. Geez, how long does it take to fix an elevator? It's been 9 months that we've been asking about it. There is handicap parking up there by the elevator, but it's not of use to anybody because the elevator's broken. So there's very little handicap parking. I know that really affects John Foreman a lot, more than the rest of us. The walkway from the garage to the mini park. I'm grateful it's there. It wasn't there to start. But it is very rough and rocky. I don't know if you guys have been back there, but it's a safety hazard. I mean, this is really all about safety. The lighting, the walkway, we really want people to be safe when they're back there. we talked at the meeting we had in February about maybe some semi-permanent solutions where we could make it a little more, not quite so rocky and dangerous, but we haven't heard a status in 2 months. So I'm not sure if they can't do anything or there's not enough money to do something, or I don't know what the issue is, but that would be very impactful to have some kind of semi-permanent solution, because we're going to be dealing with this until next June. It's not like it's going to be over, this summer. So we were told the Meadowbrook site should be finished by maybe the end of the year, the one in the back by next summer, next June. So we're going to be dealing with these issues for a long time to come. Another issue that I brought up at the meeting in February was establishment of a DORA on Lee Road. And this is an area where I think you guys can help. I've been working with Brian and Eric for a year to get the legislation put together. I actually wrote it and gave it to them, and they fixed it up with all the correct new language and stuff. So we've been going back and forth on it for quite some time. We had a meeting towards the end of the year where it was pretty much ready to go. The thinking was we'd get it before the council in March, so you could review it, and because the council has to pass it, and then it goes to the state, and then it can be approved. We want this designated outdoor refreshment area from Cedar all the way down to just north of the library. So we can really use that park. That's going to be part of the marquee and the mini park and other things for connecting the business district. And the city's all for it. We've met with the mayor several times about it. We've met with the police chief. I've met with everybody. But it's just not going anywhere. And I don't know why, for the life of me. And I can't get a status. So as far as I know, the legislation is ready for y'all to review, but I'm not really sure why it hasn't been introduced. So we're kind of shooting to have that in place and kind of the bugs worked out of it before, there's a whole bunch of new people in the neighborhood. And we really are looking forward to that. We fought hard for the marquee. We want it. We're very happy it's going up, but the impact is really way more than we expected. I think some of these small changes, like putting some signs on Cedar that guide people to Tullamore, or something like that can be better, over communicating where the parking garage is. Making sure that, and that is free. Making sure that the lighting is on at night in the stairwells, getting the elevator fixed, and improving that walkway in some way. So it's, people who are handicapped probably do have to go all the way around, because there's no way they can get through that little maze right there. Yeah. So the other issue I wanted to bring up is about atmosphere on Lee Road. And
before you do that, Law Director Hannah, any status update on DORA?
No.
Legislatively update?
No, I need to circle back with Brian Anderson and Eric.
Okay.
This was good.
Yeah, I know they have a full package ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just going to ask if the city administrator had any insight on any of this that you want to share before we move on.
I just know that it's been in discussion, particularly about the elevator.
Okay.
There was some confusion about whose elevator it was. Originally, my thinking was it was Otis, and that was a problem. But apparently, it may not be Otis, but it's the contractor that we hired. Keeps telling us they're waiting on a part. We hear the same excuse. We tried to set up a meeting recently to try to get some of their leadership to, be accountable for this. And, they weren't available. I mean, things just keep getting canceled, and we just keep getting excuses. So we're looking at some other options, but I don't have much more to share on that.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful if you know that status and you have been working it to let us know. I mean, if several of us reached out via email to get some status, and it's just been crickets. So having that communication could be really, really helpful. Do you know about the lights in the garage, Parks and Rec? If they fixed that? Okay. Well, I'm gonna follow up.
So on all that stuff, I did take notes. In my leadership meeting tomorrow, I can bring this up with the mayor and, about communicating with the status. So go ahead with whatever the last thing, I don't know.
And to close up on that, I do want to reiterate that we love that the marquee is going in there. We are really excited about it. We're very grateful for the support we have gotten with the impacts, but a little bit more would really help us out, because I want all those businesses to be there when the marquee opens, right? And we've already lost one. a new one's coming in, but, you know, it's tough.
Oh, which is the one that's coming in?
Cozumel.
Cozumel, yeah, right, yeah, okay. That's exciting.
Yeah, that is. So, you know, that being is almost patio season on Lee Road, and you know, Dewey's has a patio, and Marchand has a patio, and Bostock has a patio, and there's a lot of nice patios in that area. I'm concerned that there is a loudspeaker broadcasting music out to the street late at night. I'm not sure what time it starts because I'm inside my business operating, but
Where's
I know
the speaker?
it's across the street from my business. It's on the outside,
Okay.
piping music outside. And when I leave my business at 10:30 at night, it's always on. I know that we do have noise ordinances on the books. I'm not sure if they apply to business district, if there is a restriction. I know there is a restriction about the use of loudspeakers and amplifiers for advertising as part of the current law on the books. But I don't know what the current law is. And it seems to me that when people are out on patios and things like that, it's keeping that stuff inside your business is fine. You know, you can do whatever you want to inside your business, but having that outside on the street so that it impacts other businesses and patios, I think is going to cause an issue. So I'm bringing that up now to see if there's something we need to do with the law. Is it just a matter of enforcement? I don't know. So I'm willing to work with whoever, you know, to make this better.
Well, let me just see what the law is. Mr. Hanna, is it 9 o'clock and then is it, and does that include business districts?
Hang on,
This is the page.
get better Wi-Fi here.
That's the page I pulled out.
Well, you know what,
It's here.
Councilman Larson, go ahead, and then we'll get back to Ms.
Did you
Milano.
address the situation with music being broadcast out in the general area of the sidewalks in the DORA legislation to make sure that the ambiance is shared, acknowledge the fact it's shared air, right? It's shared, we can hear coming from your business and in, for instance, my business. Did that go into DORA at all?
That's not really a part of the legislation. It's really more about liquor licenses and safety and garbage and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Alright.
I don't
Did you
think there's a space for it.
did you approach the business that's blasting the music?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. President, so yeah, section 50903 would apply citywide, and it provides, among other things, that the following acts, among others, are declared to be loud, disturbing, and unreasonable noises in violation of this chapter. And this list is not exclusive. Loudspeakers and amplifiers for advertising is subsection 3 of subsection B. So this is 50903B3. And it says the using of any radio receiving set, musical instrument, phonograph, loudspeaker, sound amplifier, or other machine or device for the producing or reproducing of sound, which is cast upon the public streets for purposes of commercial advertising or attracting the attention of the public. So if this activity meets that definition, then it would be prohibited by the ordinance.
It sounds like it does. So looks like the legislation is there. So what's the next step? To enforcement of some kind? I don't know if there's penalties, if there's enforcement, how that's.
Well, it sounds like, first there needs to be a complaint lodged and then see what the response is, because it sounds like your complaint, you're willing to, for lack of a better term, put up with the noise till 9 o'clock, because maybe that might not be it might not be considered a violation of the noise ordinance until 9 o'clock. I don't know that. I guess that would be for a city official to assess. But that seems to be, that first step really needs to happen first. Go ahead, Councilman Penix.
I would just state I would also like someone to at least have a conversation with the business, get some type of feedback before it's escalated.
Yeah.
And I'm not stating that what you're saying isn't true, but I'm saying we obviously we can't do anything, any enforcement or legislation for a business from this table. We would need some type of facts and information for that.
Right.
So I'd like to make sure that process is followed as well before we.
Well, right now, it doesn't look like a legislative issue. It looks like, maybe an enforcement.
Based on this, it doesn't look like a legislative
Yeah.
issue, so.
I agree.
It's by notifying someone that the noise is a little loud and just having someone approach the business, letting them know what the ordinance is.
Yeah, I have discussed this with Brian in the business development office about doing that, so I'll follow up with him with that.
So, I think you had your beautiful 15 minutes, and I really appreciate you coming and enlightening us because a lot of the stuff you talked about I did not know about, so thank you. We obviously want the business districts to thrive. That's everybody in Cleveland Heights wants to see.
Yeah, and there's gonna be more development in Taylor and other places, so it's just gonna kind of move around the city. So if there can be some proactivity about wayfinding for parking and things like that for businesses, it's greatly appreciated, it makes a huge difference. And it's not a huge cost, I wouldn't think.
It's directly
Put up a
across
couple of
from your
signs.
business. It's directly across from your business.
Yeah.
So at the very least, I'll bring this up tomorrow. And then, I'll let the administration handle the communication end of it. But you're always welcome to, obviously call me anytime
I appreciate
and I'll
that.
tell you what I know.
I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So legislative review, we will do next. Let's see here, I got these glasses on. So I'm gonna go in order. So the first, skip this one.
It was the number of readings
Yeah,
too.
I will. I'm just looking at all the stuff I have to skip through. So there's a resolution recognizing April as Earth Month. That's 049/2024. 050 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Wade Trim Inc. This is, both of these are for consideration of adoption tonight. So did anybody have any questions on the Wade Trim resolution? I'll just read the rest of it. For professional engineering services relating to the construction, administration, and resident observation for the control of sanitary sewer overflow. Yes.
That is a big project, so I'm just kind of curious why, we get it's budgeted, it's stuff we have to do for the EPA consent decree, but I'm just curious how that became, attached.
You mean for first reading, why it's on first reading
Yeah.
for passage?
Yeah.
Well, that would be the administration or the law department, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I know about it, and I don't have details, is that the memo from the Director of Public Works indicates that the city was just notified that the agreement was needed ASAP.
Yeah.
This is the agreement with Wade Trim. The work obviously has been underway and has been planned for a long time, but I don't know if it's a matter of a prior agreement, capping out, and this being needed now. That's all I know about it.
And it's part of that loan forgiveness grant that we've asked for as well, so
Correct.
I don't see any issue with that, I'm just curious.
Right. Yes.
I would like to make a recommendation if Councilman Larson doesn't mind that add Earth Month to the list that we have already and incorporate it so that
Absolutely.
all of us could be assigned.
All right, the next one. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do we know why? So I'm looking at the cover sheet for the request, and I see Monmouth and Lee, SSO. Do we know why that was chosen? Is there like a list that we're working through of projects?
There is, and a lot of that is broken down in the action plan that the city submitted to the EPA, which I can forward you a link to. It's actually on the website, but if you don't know where to look, it's a little bit obscure, so.
So we're working through a plan that's already established.
Correct, it's following further execution of the projects identified to the EPA.
Okay.
And then for first reading only, we have Council Vice President. We have skip something?
No, continue, sorry, continue.
This is 051/2024. Did you want to speak to this? It's a resolution supporting US Senate Bill 3681.
Does everyone's familiar with what a paraprofessional is? Yes, so we all know within our school systems, we are having some serious problems with teachers, paraprofessionals, which are a school assistant to the teachers, as well as bus drivers, as everybody in the school is just kind of vanishing and disappearing. And the paraprofessionals are the teacher assistants. They have to take a pretest prior to being a paraprofessional or have to have a associate degree. The paraprofessionals are actually making around $9 to $12 an hour to maybe $16 an hour. And this legislation, which was put out there, is actually creates a grant to help obtain, recruit, assist paraprofessionals in a way that in professional development opportunities, advancements, and higher wages. So this coming from the US for a bill to support the kids that go to our schools and across the nation for the next generations. We need to be able to support this, and I thought it was something worthwhile to support because we are losing all of the educators as well as paraprofessionals and staff within the school system, and whatever we can do to provide or grants can be funded to help maintain those people, I think is something worthwhile for us to do. And it helps economically as well with within our city, as far as people making more wages, able to purchase homes and do a lot of more other things as well.
If the grant comes through.
If the grant comes through, correct.
And I know, from teaching at Shaker, I remember when the paraprofessionals were not part of the union, and we were losing a lot of people because low wages and so forth, a lot of turnover at that level. And they're, obviously extremely valuable to
And a
them.
lot of them now are within agencies, are being hired under agencies, which is even less money.
Yeah, didn't know that. Yes,
I'm sorry. One more question about the wage trim resolution. If I remember correctly, maybe about a month ago, the mayor shared with council that he received bids for a project on Monmouth that I think was about $2 million. Am I understanding correctly that maybe this is for the engineering for that project and the 2 million would be for the construction of the project?
I can't answer that for
Okay.
sure. I don't know the answer to that.
Do we know if they're related at all? These.
I mean, they probably are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't say for sure.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? This or any previous things we talked about? All right, and now first readings, second readings. Resolution 030.
No, we have another first reading before we had it. The storefront. First reading.
Which,
The one I handed
what
out to
number?
you guys, it's 053. I
Okay,
just handed to you guys.
thank you. We'll put that kind of separately. All right, so this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Strategic Structure Investments LLC for a loan under the city storefront loan fund program to help renovate the storefronts at 2201 North Taylor Road, kind of near the Caledonia neighborhood obviously on the Taylor side. And this is just being read. And we just got handed this right, so I don't expect you to, if you have questions, by all means, but I haven't even read it yet. Yeah.
Is it expected that we put it on, amend the agenda this evening to
No.
include this? Oh,
Yes, we are amending the agenda to include it on
Well-
first reading, but not for passage.
But not for passage.
Right,
Sorry.
so you need somebody to make a motion.
Dude, you could be that person.
I have another motion that I can make.
All right. And then there's, yes,
Mr. President, so do we need someone to motion to add this?
yes.
Does someone want to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
So 037, this is second reading. And actually, I don't know if I want to go through all these separately, but there's several resolutions.
37
To
through
make-
41.
Yeah, 37 through 41, it's just appointing the people that we already spoke about to various committees. Any questions about any of the appointments? Okay, resolution, I'm gonna skip down to 042-2024, resolution authorizing participation in the ODOT Cooperative Purchase Program for road salt. Any questions about road salt? Yes.
I plan to make a comment during council tonight too, is that when we put in this annual order for salt, I'd like people to be thinking about in the administration where possibly that salt barn could be moved
Yeah.
so that we can develop the Noble Triangle. So I plan to make that statement.
I made a mental prediction you were gonna go.
And I was gonna second it with you.
That's, certainly a reasonable request, and, with the money coming for the demolition, we're kind of getting ready to clean that place up
Yeah.
and
How much
hopefully,
is the salt?
hopefully develop it.
How much salt are we purchasing?
Um,
Overlook it.
That,
It hasn't been identified yet.
Okay.
The director will be determining that before the deadline for the order.
I would wonder if we had anything left over. I mean, what did we do? 2 rounds? I think there were 2 times where we salted the roads this
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of snow.
Okay, I think we're now down to 043. This is the last second reading, authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Knowles Municipal Forestry.
Can we just find out how much salt we're gonna be purchasing?
No, go ahead.
He said that they're looking into the order now and they're gonna get back before it's due.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that, thank you.
Yeah, the director, sometimes you get snow after you authorize this, hopefully not this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that number is identified before the deadline for ordering under the contract.
Okay.
So this is the one for the tree inventory, 043. I don't remember if anybody asked questions about this 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it is budgeted,
Good plan.
yeah. And we do have hopefully money to, follow up on whatever they find are our tree needs in the city. I know our street's pretty flush, but anyway, so that is the legislative agenda. Next, we have potential legislation, and that would be first Councilwoman Larson's resolution. Yeah. So for those of us here and those watching, this is a resolution that 052-2024 that was discussed at some length 2 weeks ago in this room. And Councilwoman Larson, I know you made a couple of adjustments. Why don't we start with that and then we'll go to the discussion.
I asked that the name of the young woman who was killed in Gaza, who was a Heights grad, be added. Excuse me. So that was done.
Okay, so that is, let me see.
Third whereas clause.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just so everybody knows how it reads.
We added the council encourages residents to offer support and sincere condolences to the family and friends of Heights High School graduate Bara Abu Elish and to all other members of the Israeli and Palestinian communities of Cleveland Heights who had lost loved ones. And then Director Hannah added to this tragic conflict.
Okay.
And then Director Hannah added in the next whereas this body condemns all forms of hate and believes that all people, regardless of their gender, nationality, religion, have the right to learn, work, worship, and live free from intimidation, harassment, or fear of violence. And then we skip down to section 3 underneath the action items and I asked that we delete Islamophobia and make it more parallel construction so that council condemns all forms of hate, including racism, hatred against the Muslim community, and hatred against the Jewish community, and expresses its firm belief that was a Director Hannah wording, all people have the right to learn, work, worship, gather, advocate, mourn, and celebrate free from intimidation, harassment, and fear of violence. So those were the changes that were made.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Councilman?
I just want to say thank you to Councilwoman Larson for these changes, for adding the personal touches that we did in terms of the impact of our community as well. And just based on the feedback that I've gotten from the community, this seems to be a very measured approach. I know that there was some feedback that I know I received in terms of adding something in terms of the numbers or things like that, but it really gets into the weeds if you start doing that and things are shifting. And so I think this really does bring this home and it makes it more personal for the city. It also acknowledges the impact of the loss that we had here in terms of that connection. So thank you for this. Absolutely.
You're very welcome, Councilor Maddox.
Yes,
And I thank you also for looking at incorporating the AFL-CIO information in here as well. Thank you.
all right. So I'm gonna, unless there's an objection, I'm gonna put this on the agenda, when we have that place to make
Amendments?
amendments, yeah. All right,
I think that's what you want to do.
So
yeah.
do we agree to move it forward to council tonight
Well,
for a vote?
I'm just putting it, I discussed this with the law director and I'm just putting it in the language that we can put it in, which is basically if there's no objections, we'll
Add it to
we'll add it to the agenda. And we don't have to have a motion or a vote in here.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
the motion would be
Out there.
to amend the agenda
Agenda,
there
out
and
there.
Yeah.
pass or fail.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody had an objection and there were like, I got the idea that maybe four of us, let's say, didn't want to do that, this would be the time to speak. So, so hearing none, I will move on to the legislative process.
Nope.
Oh, Jim Petrus, you know what, I did write this in here, but I wrote it too small. So Councilman Petrus has a piece of legislation that you would like to speak on.
I drafted up an ordinance with the law director's help, and this was actually in process before the council discussed our new process. So I apologize that I'm discussing it here rather than initiating the idea in committee of the whole. But in essence, my
We need
view,
committee. We are in committee at all.
right, rather than initiating it here,
Oh, got it.
I'm presenting something that's already been drafted up and reviewed by the law department. So in essence, my view is that the city has a vital interest in ensuring that people newly elected to council can learn as much as they can before being sworn in. And so I think that this is an attempt to try to better engage folks who are elected to this body. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Yes, and
the whole packet.
Yes,
Mr. President.
yes, please.
I love this legislation. I think it's extremely helpful. When I read it, I was thinking back in terms of the experience that I had when we were elected in terms of how open that previous council was to getting us that information, to making sure that we were in executive sessions. But I think anything that we could do to help with any transition, I think is extremely helpful. I know we attempted that in council to do that somewhat with you, but to have something structurally in place, I think makes all the difference. I think anything that we could do to prepare a new council person and as they're transitioning would absolutely help to prepare them for that. And that as much information as possible after being elected. So I think it's an excellent idea.
Mr. President, if I could add one more thing. I see this sort of as a starting place. So I know that there are some cities like Lakewood that have training requirements for newly elected council members. And so Councilman Maddox, I know that you have a lot of experience with developing training. And so if you would be interested at a later point in trying to draft up sort of like a training program for newly elected council members, I'd love to do that with you so that we could, make this even better. So
Absolutely.
That's a great idea, and I will tell you, this is something I brought up, almost 2.5 years ago. And there was a little bit of resistance at that time, but I do agree that we can do a lot more, and this is a good first step. But I do also agree that there is a lot more we can do than just this. There for those listening, and I don't know if people are that interested in this particular kind of thing, but most of the council rules and procedures and so forth are in a section of the our ordinance called Section 111, and we could use some review there. So here's what I'll say. I'll refer this to Administrative Services. We'll take a look at it in Administrative Services, and perhaps with Councilman Cobb, who is the chair's permission, we can also look at other parts of 111, and see what other enhancements we might be able to make on the transition from when people get elected to when they get seated in council.
President Kudo?
Yes.
I would reiterate that that's extremely important, because when I started in February, there wasn't, and that was after you all had been installed, that I couldn't find information. Thanks to Chair of the Administrative Services, Cobb, he sat me aside in coffee one day and said, "You need to file a report with the Ethics Commission." Yeah. So I wouldn't have done that, and it had to be done really quickly. So anything that we're putting together becomes a part of the training mode, and it was difficult to make sure that Jim had the information, Councilor Petrus had the information he needed, that we all knew we had going into January. So I just see this as extremely important and part of how we are identified as professionals that need information to do our jobs. So that would be part of that whole packet.
Go ahead, Councilman.
I just to add that I agree. Anything you can do to onboard a new council person to make sure that you're, number one, you have continuity with business. I think it's critical, especially when he came in right after ARPA. We were in the middle of those ARPA discussions and really discussing a full budget. Anything that you can offer someone at that point, I think is extremely critical at that time too. So I think this is more than important for anyone prepping, especially now when we have an opening right now.
Right.
Anything that we could do to kind of talk about that and what that looks like to ease any transition, I think is helpful.
And I remember when right after I got elected, Council President, help me, Stein, thank you. He said, "Oh, you need this information? I have this for you." There is a discretion to let council people sit in on executive session. But what you don't want to do is leave stuff to the discretion of whoever's in this seat. Although I'm not casting any aspersions, but this should be something that transcends who's in council leadership, as making a kind of, in a sense, an arbitrary decision, as opposed to something that's mandatory onboarding for new council people. So I'm glad we all agree. Go ahead.
And I agree with everybody and everything that's been said here, but I also think we should also think about continued training and far as the Ohio Municipal League and those different trainings that they offer to make sure that we continue up some type of training just to keep us on board of what's going on, to be professional as well.
I'm glad you said that, because I want to reiterate that not just that, but we should be sending Addie, every time you think of something that costs money, whether it's the council budget or any budget items, send them to Addie so that we have them ready for September, October when we get into budget season. So.
Well, and in terms of trainings, send them to me so I can include them in that handy dandy council orientation book that I put together for you all, that I hope you will use when discussing this.
Well, I would like you to do a presentation of that at the
Sure
appropriate time.
thing.
And when you think you're ready to say, hey guys, here's what I got. We're all ears.
I believe I sent it out to all of you guys.
You did
So,
by email.
yeah.
But
I printed it out for you, but I will print it. I can print it out for everyone.
That'd be nice.
I did. That's nice.
Then we can't lose it.
Yes, and it's in a nice binder, so I can print that out.
Oh, so it's ready for
Oh, yeah, it's
review.
been-
Okay,
I
all
already
right.
sent it to you guys.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't know if that was like a
Oh,
draft or.
Yeah, no,
just-
it's all
okay.
good to go. I mean, it'll always be added to, obviously.
Yeah.
So
So anything else? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the legislative process. This is something that we worked on in a committee of the whole meeting last week for a couple hours, actually. We have a draft of a legislative process that we're hopefully gonna all agree to use for council-initiated legislation. It's got 5 steps with a couple sub-steps here and there. And then a summary of the legislative process that we use for administration-initiated legislation, which we kind of already use, but it's good to have it written down. Did anybody have anything to add, subtract, modify?
I have a clarifying question. So when we talked through this, my understanding was that we could, within a committee, if we reach a consensus that the law department should look at something, within the committee, ask that the law department draft something up, and then they could provide it back to the committee for feedback. And then after the committee is ready to report back to committee of the whole, the legislation would move back. Based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like this process, as it's written out, says that you would request engagement from the law department after it's moved back to committee of the whole. So I just want to make sure that we can engage with the law department within the committee before it goes back to committee of the whole.
Well, go ahead,
May I
since you did
Just,
modifications.
I would say if you look at the flow chart, I would say the further research and development may be required portion of it. I do think that probably would give you some leave to go to the law department for any type of research.
Because that's where you may want to do it. But as
Right.
far as writing something up,
Yeah,
I think you got to wait until after that committee of the whole. I'm talking about actually writing legislation as opposed to getting straight in your mind what the content is. You see what I'm saying?
So, So in the housing committee, we have some ideas right now. So before requesting that the law department begin drafting things,
Drafting, yeah.
we would like for people to return to committee of the whole, share the idea.
Find out if you have partners.
Okay,
And I don't mean that in the formal sense, although that would be fine too, but I'm talking about, let me put it this way, that there's not more than 3 people who are saying, no way. Because again, I think I said this in our discussion, there are gonna be people who you're gonna present the idea to that are hearing it for the first time that may say, wow, that seems like an interesting idea. I don't know if I support it yet because I'd have to see more, because again, they're hearing about it for the first time, but they're not against it.
so would it be okay in that sort of scenario? Let's say something is referred back to committee of the whole, there's no strong objections, law department gets the go-ahead to begin drafting something. Is it okay for the law department to then work with the committee and like, okay, here's our first draft, what do you guys think? We provide feedback to the law department and they get it into a good place? Or would all of that sort of discussion have to happen in committee of the whole? I guess my preference is that we be allowed to have that sort of back and forth within the committee.
I thought most of the work was gonna be done within the committee. Not within the committee of the whole.
But I think what you're asking is if you don't have what you're implying is if you don't have legislation, then in legislative form, what are we talking about? Or is
After committee of the whole, we share the idea and committee of the whole says, okay, we're fine with that. Law department begins drafting it. Is it okay for the law department to say, okay, this was requested by the housing committee, so we're gonna share it with the housing committee so that they could look over our draft, provide feedback.
I think that
then
would be able
work.
to do the chair.
yeah, I think that was kind of the idea.
Okay, just wanna make
As
sure
far
that
as I'm concerned.
that sort of
Yeah, I
back
understand
and
you now.
forth can happen at the committee level.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's if there's nothing in writing, correct?
If there was initially nothing in writing,
Correct,
yeah,
okay.
because some people are, I would assume some of us are gonna draft something like that, would be something we could do without, again, the law department that would be, would have the whereas clauses and maybe, the things that it accomplishes, but still need, not be, ready for prime time, so to speak. Councilman Larson?
2 points.
Yeah.
In the second, number 2, under the summary for the legislation that should be initiated by council, when we talk about further research and development, is this the stage at which it would be appropriate to approach the administration about any, because in the rules we talk about staff input and recommendations shall be obtained on any ordinance or resolution that affects the questions of the city, and we should be doing that that part of the legislative process as well. I mean, it's suggested in standing rules, we're talking about in a minute, but I just wanna make sure that where would we weave in that administration?
So if this is my interpretation, okay, only, I'm not speaking for anybody else. We're allowed to inquire about ideas or anything that has to do with potential pending or legislation that's on the books at any time. So I think it's up to the author
Okay.
as to when you engage the administration, and this could be at any point. This could be before you've done number one. You may want to reach out to the administration.
Okay.
I would certainly understand that. I guess what you're saying is, why didn't we write that into this?
Well, yeah, but, cause I noticed it in here and it wasn't here.
Yeah, should be a clarification.
So can you, I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what would you like to see where? Because I'm perfectly willing to massage this a little.
Just move from that over to here.
Yeah, we could do that.
I'm sorry,
Just
tell me what you're saying.
this last sentence in number 4 on temporary standing rules, will be approved legislation issued by council. And you could add, when the chair or the person who has the idea needs information, they've got a solid, you can't just go with a whim. You must have a solid proposal to ask for information. You can't just-
So where do you want to add this?
I mean, AD Councilor Maddox said.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make sure we're looking at the same, since you're talking about the staff input recommendations
That's in the standing rules.
in the standing rules on number 4.
Yeah.
And you wanna shift that to number 2, between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Can you do that?
And then the other question I have is, Director Hannah?
Anybody else want to say anything about that?
No, I agree with her.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
We talked last week about a template, Director Hannah, for us to use. Do you think that's still a really good idea? I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, I think it is a good idea. It's not done.
Okay,
But yeah,
work in
and
progress.
it may be a work in process for a little while, because I don't think there is a cookie cutter sitting out there somewhere that I can just grab.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a matter of trying to put together in a way that's as straightforward as possible, kind of an outline of the information and the background that's needed to put together a piece of legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. Done.
Outside of that, I would say one more thing, but does anybody else have anything on this? So when it comes to resolutions, we didn't actually put anything in here, but like, for instance, the resolution that you put forward today. I don't see a need to put anything in here. I'm talking to you, council persons. I don't see any need to put anything about resolutions in here. To me, it's like, if you want to move a resolution forward, I don't think it needs to go through this process.
You mean in terms of like the day, month,
Yeah.
or like in support of?
Yeah, I'm sorry, in support of resolutions. I don't think we need to go through committee processes or anything like that. If anybody feels a need to have something on this paper for resolutions, please speak up. Because nobody's ever, to my knowledge, nobody's ever done that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but
So just for clarification, so with those, should we just reach out to the law department on our own?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Or me?
Yeah, for a lot of those, it's.
Those are pretty.
Something already
Yeah.
exists.
Right.
Addie can do a lot of that stuff and has. So, sure, Director Hannah always appreciates that. You have enough to do, right?
So far,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, yeah.
I don't know if I saw it. I know during the meeting, we had a discussion about creating some type of mechanism during committee of the whole. So councilors can give an update if there's something that's working on.
Like a lightning round.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was doing with this potential
that's-
legislation
I was wondering
with
if that's
that.
what okay.
We can call it something else if you'd rather,
Can we
but
do committee reports?
on
instead
in
of-
here.
Yeah, on the agenda, can we just say committee reports, so then each person can go around, if they have a committee report, they can do it
We
here?
could do that. And then I also wanted to do, if we have some real quick stuff for the administration, you know, I told the mayor was fine with it. You know, basically just said, I'll just email you when we're gonna do it. So why don't we do this? Email, if you have some questions that you'd like the administration to answer. Now, this has to be short stuff. This can't be, because we can't add, you know, half an hour to the agenda of like, so I can take maybe 2 or 3 questions, maybe a little bit more if they're real short, you know, answers from the administration that we want at this table in this room during committee of the whole. You know, we can also do that. I have already spoken with the mayor about that.
But I'll add a standing.
So given
Yeah.
Given Councilwoman Larson's addition to this, I guess, let me ask the law director, can we adopt this as our, I don't know, temporary process for legislating? I mean, do we need a motion for that, or?
Can you adopt this summary of legislation initiated by council? As we've discussed in the past, because you have Chapter 111 already existing, as you mentioned, and because the charter says that once those rules are adopted, they can only be added to or changed with a vote of 5 members of council, I would have to do something that I haven't yet on here, which is to go through and see if there's anything that implicates any of the existing provisions of Chapter 111, a conversation we had in the work session a couple weeks ago. But other than that, you could go ahead and you would want to vote, I think, if you wanted to have any kind of formality, and if there are provisions that you're impacting, even temporarily, I think you would want to make sure you have a vote of 5 members.
Okay, well, I'd rather wait until you've actually looked this over.
I would rather that myself.
And
yes.
so we'll do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I was gonna recommend or suggest, as we talked about last time, that we should maybe just try to go through this for a few months before we start to vote and all of that thing and see how it works. And then we can actually adapt some things, you know, because we're actually going through the processes.
Well, that's in a sense what we're doing. We're gonna adopt this by motion as a kind of a temporary standing rule kind of thing. And then we talked about, and this was again last week, we talked about if after 6 months or some period of time, we actually want to codify it in 111 and it is codifiable, you know, we can decide that. But the motion that we were going to put forward was not going to be to codify it. It was just that we're making a public pronouncement that we are going to follow this process when it comes to legislation, that the 6 of us and soon to be 7 of us will all, you know, say that we're going to work the same way. We're not going to be bound legally.
No, I just have a question.
But yes.
So if we do that and we vote on it as a temporary process, if there's some snags that we find just going through the process, how do we amend that or justify that versus going through a 3 or 4 month scenario of just actually working through it and us as adults agreeing that we're gonna work through this piece, and then if there's something that we need to tighten up or fix or adjust, we have the ability to do it before we vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think we amend it right in this room.
Yeah, and I would just keep track of what's not working.
And that's the actual purpose of not codifying anything right now, is we're gonna give this a test run.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that piece. I was just asking the question,
Yeah, we'll do it right here.
by making a temporary vote, can we still modify or change anything
Yes.
in that? Okay,
Yes.
that's what I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, we're
Mr.
good.
President, if I could just clarify though, I will review this for the purpose that I mentioned, but in addition, I think you, this doesn't mean that you would be codifying it, but I think that council would be well advised to adopt a resolution attaching this as an exhibit
I see.
if you're going to go that direction instead of just sort of working with them for a while. And that would be consistent with what was done 2021 with the temporary standing rules, or whenever that was, yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. So we'll do that April 15th.
Okay.
Yep. All right, and then the last, Yeah.
Question,
Yes, sir.
I would just wants to I wanna make sure that the law director has a chance to go through these proposed rules and chapter 111 before we pass any informal rules. Are you gonna be able to get that done?
I should be able to,
Okay.
yeah. Because I looked through the prior version for that purpose, and there were a few provisions of chapter 111 that were implicated by some of those changes. I haven't done that with this updated version.
Do you think April 15th is,
As we sit here tonight, I think so, yes.
all right, well, if it turns out,
Turns out not.
Yeah.
well,
Let you know.
we can discuss that Friday, actually.
Sure.
Okay, any other? All right, lastly, okay, so the last 5 minutes of our meeting last week on the legislative process, we talked about council rule, we didn't really talk about council rules. We talked that we just bring it up today. Does anybody want to go forward? So I don't want to talk about any specific rules, but that's not what's on the agenda. It's just, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to proceed with any kind of formal council rules, you know, beyond what we already have in 111 and beyond what Robert's rules covers?
Want me to go
Does any-
first?
I love that sound. Somebody has those little things that you can make the sound of crickets chirping. I don't have anything to say about it. Yeah.
I'm fine with going what we discussed before. I think that Councilman Cobb brought up that we go by Robert's rules, orders for our council rules. I'm fine with that.
Go ahead.
I'm fine with that unless it becomes inadequate. If something should occur that we can't hypothesize at this point in time, that becomes a struggle, then we need to talk about it here in committee of the whole and try to understand what happened and how we can do it differently.
Agree with that.
I mean, it's sure, if something comes up that was something we didn't expect and you think, my God, if we had a rule in place, this wouldn't have happened, so maybe we need to do something.
Or just
Maybe.
like she said, we can discuss it here, the
Yeah.
committee of the whole, just.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay. I don't have any further business. Yes.
Are we going to have the executive session?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to say this. The executive session was canceled. I'm sorry. I just found that out like 5-10 minutes before we came out here. Yes.
I just have an update. I haven't met with Parks and Recs, and I wanted to explain what I've been doing the last
Sure,
couple of
please.
months
We
real
got
quick.
time.
I've got an opportunity to meet with several people in the community, both the Parks and Recs Board, Advisory Board, the administration and the mayor, and I'm still meeting with some of the staff members, but I'm gonna have the first meeting in April, but I wanted to get a sense of what was already working, what was happening in terms of what projects we're working on. They just had another meeting 2 weeks ago for Parks and Rec. And at that meeting, it gave me clarity on two things I know that was being worked on in terms of increasing the support for scholarships. And so I wanted to kind of see where we were with that. So I'm gonna hold the first meeting, I'm gonna get with Addie so we can reach out to the team and kind of update everyone. But I kind of want to do it the same way I did planning and development, just get a sense of what was happening first before I started having meetings to see kind of what was happening, because I know you guys were doing a ton of work. So I've got those updates now, so I'll be scheduling that. Just wanted the table to know.
And scholarship is very important to them, so if you can dig down into that, that would be great. But you have to get a lot of the information from the administration.
Do we have the list?
I think it would behoove you to find out what exactly the balance is in that account right now, because it seems like it's been at $60,000 for the time that I was on the committee.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like,
more than that.
are we not spending it, or are we continuing to getting more revenue in, so it's counterbalancing expenses? So it needs to be used.
That was part of the conversation that came up too, that meeting, because I think that, they were still saying it was hovering around 60, so people were trying to figure out how that was
Yeah.
possible. So, that's one of the things on my list too.
So I'm gonna look at your screen.
Well, so since you said that, I probably should give an update too, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
You all know that I'm working on the dog park with Director Ledbetter. We've had, I think, 2 meetings. They were very short. I had 1 meeting, 2 meetings, maybe 45 minutes. They were been kind of sparse in between because of my mother being ill. But we did meet maybe a week or 2 ago, and we had a couple of sites that we went to look at because the Parks and Rec Board had given out a couple of sites. So we looked at a couple of sites to figure out which would be a better site. I've been here 50-something years. I did not realize how much space was at Cumberland. Until you actually go really deep back into there, I was like, my God, that's a lot of space. But I think we're gonna be looking at a space at Cumberland, but we still have to do the community meeting and all that. We have some updates as far as pricing on fencing, dog activity, what do you call it?
Agility.
Thank you. And all of those things. So once we have all of that, I think my list that Director Hannah gave me should be almost complete, and I should be ready to bring all of that information to the committee of the whole and be ready for a public meeting.
Please.
You just said something else that sparked something back in me with parks, and I guess it's a question for the council. I'm working on supplying some numbers for shipping containers for the part of ARPA that I'm working on. Is that something, like how do we wanna go about that? Are we still handling that in one big portion? Or do you guys wanna hear as we're working on our personal projects to?
Well, let me ask you a question first. I know you were planning on doing some kind of public engagement with that. When
That's the other thing figured we need a joint meeting with planning and development, because initially that's what we were gonna do anyway when you were chairing it. Now we switched, and so we would still be doing it. I think we still need to do that. You're planning and development chair. In terms of getting that
I'll do like
feedback
a
from
public
everyone.
hearing,
Yeah. So,
joint public hearing.
and we have discussed that, doing a joint hearing with planning and development and at the time. And I'm still interested in that, but everything is switched. I think we're waiting until after the holiday now, so I need to connect with you on that.
Yeah, cause
But
I'm not
that's-
aware of any of that.
Yeah, that was part of that feedback we had, I think was the last planning and development meeting about before we moved everything over, we were gonna try to bring both committees together to do that.
So, I mean, I'll leave it to the two of you to set something up, and that way, because I know that's a lot of planning. And I mean, I'm not trying to double entendre, I mean, with, trying to get a public meeting together.
Yeah, 'cause I
We're both
have
on
to-
Parks and Rec anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to do one for the dog park anyway, after I get all the information that I've been directed by Director Hannah.
All right,
Suggested,
oh, yeah.
suggested.
On-
But I'm, look, I'm just letting you know, I'm bringing it
So if
forward.
people wanna continue on this.
Well, let me just do this real quick and then you can go. So everybody knows there were 17 applicants for the vacant council seat. Eddie has them here in alphabetical order: Graham Ball, Raymond Braun, Gene Gordon, Adam Portner, Jim Posh, James Nemastil, Ronald Oswick, Ron Cuarte, Lou Radivojevich, Michael Riley, Roderick Rush, Eric Silverman, Patty Substenley, probably putting the accent in the wrong place, Cole Ware, Darlene White, James Williams, and Ray Wilson. So it's April 1st. The League of Women Voters has all this information. They have their applications. The applications are on our website. So public can look at the applications now. So after the League of Women Voters does their video interviews, we'll sit down in executive session on April 15th, and we'll talk about our next steps. So I'm just asking that, since it's 2 weeks away, that we all be familiar enough with, I can't tell you today what day those
Interviews will be done. I was
interviews
just
will
about to say.
posted.
Well, they should be done with them by next Wednesday the 10th. So I would think that they would be posted by the 12th at the latest, so you have a full weekend.
Okay. So,
Right, she's like, wait a minute.
That's what Ben told me.
does that sound possible to you?
I have no idea.
That's what my other questions
So the
today.
15th.
Yeah, go ahead.
President Kuda, I would also like, if Addie, would you send a list to us of the 17 to make sure that we
Yes.
have encapsulated them where we need to?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right,
guys.
that's right,
Pretty
yeah.
consolidated, but I wanna make sure.
And that way at least you can put the name in the search bar instead of trying to, right, yeah. Yes,
I know that you shared that the executive session was canceled just before this meeting, but I really hope that we as a council have an opportunity to talk with Mr. Anderson and the mayor about a potential deal regarding Grocery Outlet. I went out to their Boardman location back in February. After that visit, there were some things I liked, some things that concerned me. I reached out to Mr. Anderson and the mayor asking that they provide an update to council. I didn't receive a response. I reached out a second time. I did not receive a response. I reached out a third time, and eventually Mr. Anderson responded saying that there was no update. We have learned that that was not true because Councilman Cobb, President Kuda, and I were at this community meeting where some details about a would-be deal were shared. I continue to hear details from community members about details of a would-be deal, and I think that it's really important that we have a chance to talk with Mr. Anderson and learn about this directly from him.
well, here's what I know, and I'll ask the law director to weigh in if you feel you need to. I just asked, is there any legislation? And the answer was no. So if there's no legislation, Mr. Hanna, what else could we be briefed on something other than legislation?
No, I think, so I don't know all the details that the councilman is referring to that the community is talking about. But there's a meeting scheduled with Mr. Russo, his attorney, city attorneys, and city planning department later this week.
Okay,
That'll be my first sit down with them, and I'm hopeful to learn
Ever?
more about what it is. Yeah,
okay,
to learn more about what it is that they're specifically requesting. You know, we know that there's been a request for a dollar amount styled as a subsidy, but not a vehicle for that subsidy or, you know, any of the particulars or details that would allow me to say this comes within the bases upon which council could go into executive session under the Ohio Revised Code to talk about it privately. I can't say, as we sit here tonight, that you're able to do that lawfully. So that's the reason that it wasn't happening tonight. So, yeah, we should know more later this week. It's my understanding that there is a special committee of the whole meeting next week. It's theoretically possible, and certainly would communicate with you, Mr. President, that there could be information that would be useful to share with council at that time about how the negotiations are going. I can't say that there will, but it's possible.
right. And Councilman, my concern, I mean, let's just say something does come to us. I mean, if nothing ever comes to us, then it's a moot point. But if something does come to us, as long as we're not asked to do something, you know, like in an unreasonable amount of time, you know, it just plays out like everything else plays out in a, you know, something where we get it, we get to digest it, we get to ask questions. You know, we're in executive session. I mean, if it follows, you know, in a sense, regular order, I mean, you know, I'm fine with whenever it starts, you know, as long as, you know, again, you know, we have to follow the law. We can't go into executive session with no
Basis.
legal basis for it. So I understand that. So let's just, right now, we'll just let it play out and, you know, hope that you know, if and when something comes forward, we have adequate time to deal with it. Yes.
Special committee of the whole next week?
That's the Racial Justice Task Force date. It
All right.
is
Okay, yeah.
I was actually gonna read that in my president report, but
Tuesday.
I even asked, you know, hey, if for some reason, can everybody make that
Tuesday,
the
10:30.
Tuesday, Rachel, 10:30? I tossed it out there, you know, we'll just see what happens, you know, that could be a possible executive session if something
Okay.
was ripe for that time. I mean, we'll
That's
just
the
have.
9th.
That's
The 9th, yep.
the 9th, yeah. All right, no further business. We're gonna adjourn at, well, that's not the right time.
7:09.
We're gonna adjourn at 7:09. 7:30 we'll start our regular meeting. This meeting is adjourned.